Thank you all very much. Have a great conference. Appreciate the time. I would love to introduce my colleague, Andy MacMillan, who's on the AIIM Board of Directors from Oracle, and Andy will take it from here. Thank you all very much.
Great job, John. Morning. I want to start off saying I'm very happy to be here, and I mean that in the actual sense of I didn't think I was going to make it here at one point. I missed my first flight that I've ever missed in all my years of travel yesterday. I had a 7 a.m. flight out of San Francisco, and I set my recurring alarm that I use every day on my iPhone for 4:45 in the morning, but it's a recurring weekday alarm, which means it didn't go off on Sunday. So I woke up and it was light outside, which is really bad if you're catching a 7 a.m. flight. And when I called the travel department, they said, well, the first available flight to DC with any kind of connection model will get you there Tuesday morning at 9:45. I said, I think that's the last 5 minutes of my keynote, so that's really not going to work. And a lot of people made a bunch of calls and finally got me on a flight, but I'm actually literally extremely happy to have made it here based on how I started this whole process. We're going to have a bit of a loose session this morning for our hour here. We've got two great customers that are going to come up and talk about some case studies around how they've actually applied these technologies to solve real problems. I think you'll find them compelling and very interesting use cases of this kind of technology. We're going to talk a little bit about systems of engagement and systems of record, as John just talked about. But I wanted to kick it off with a fun little video that we've put together. I don't know if many of you follow the Oracle stream on Twitter, but we've been using hashtag of E2O bunnies to talk about the challenges that John just talked about, these transformational challenges, and we've been releasing these videos each Tuesday morning. And this morning we released episode 3, so we thought we'd kick it off with taking a look at the video. What we want to talk about this morning is really this relationship between the kinds of systems that you just saw in the video. This idea that there are tremendous opportunities around social and systems of engagement, but the real opportunity is to tie them into your business and have them drive your business objectives, which is really what the video is getting to. This idea that doing these activities for the sake of doing them is not a means unto themselves. It's actually supposed to be a business activity driving at business objectives. So what we're going to talk through is basically a very brief summary. I'm going to cover, to some extent, the material John covered, so I'm going to summarize that. He was kind enough to give me a heads up that he would be covering this and assumed I would as well. A little bit on the social software revolution, but then we're going to specifically dive into why is content management an important part of this social revolution. I think that's what's critically important to us here at Info360 and to those of you that are AIM members and what the association's really about and some of the work that the association's doing. And then we'll talk about how do we fuse these worlds together and drive that business value that we're talking about. So the social software revolution is happening. This is again, tremendous opportunity on one hand to not just use new means of communicating and new technologies, but actually to change business models. There are some incredible stories out there. I won't go through and repeat them. I think they've all made the conference circuit to some extent, but about organizations who have not just embraced the technology, but actually looked at their core business model. There was some of that this morning in the first keynote, to actually change how their business functions, to actually create new revenue streams or drive significant cost out of an existing process. The social revolution is speeding up the way business happens as well. There's more channels, there's more vehicles, they're faster channels, it's mobile. It's all of these things coming together, as John talked about, happening at one point in time and having a tremendous impact on business. The challenge, however, is a lot of us are looking at it as one problem. And it's really a pervasive shift that we need to be taking into account. And I use Facebook as a simple example. I talk to a lot of customers who say, well, what should we do about Facebook? And I say, well, what are you trying to do? And how does that relate to Facebook? On one hand, there's the idea of bringing Facebook-like concepts and paradigms into the enterprise, which can drive a lot of value. On the other hand, I'm sure your marketing department is actually trying to get out onto Facebook to reach your customers. And those are very different objectives. So it's really about the business transformation process behind the objectives. And that's where I think the social software revolution is exciting. So AIM has really taken a lead in going out and trying to tie these systems together and figure out how to drive business value. So how many of you have read the white paper that AIM put together with Jeffrey Moore? Quick show of hands. Okay, a good number of you. If you haven't, I would really recommend you take a look at this. John Mancini and the board at AIM, this is before I joined the board, I think showed some real vision and leadership. And what they did was they saw this shift occurring in the market around a lot of the topics that John just talked about. And so they said, you know, this is important to our members. It's important to the content management community that we understand what this shift means in terms of content management. So we actually created what we called the Jeffrey Moore Task Force. We hired Jeffrey Moore of Crossing the Chasm fame. Most of you are familiar with Jeffrey Moore, I assume. He wrote a very famous book on technology adoption, in which technology needs to move from the early adopters, which is the first adoption curve, the techies, people like me that try stuff that's kind of in beta, and it might kind of work and it might kind of not, but it's interesting, to the rest of the world. And how do people like my mother take up technology who are using it because it works? So there's this second adoption curve, and you need to cross that chasm to be successful. So we brought Jeffrey in along with, I think there were 9 or 10 of us as vendors that were involved or key people in the industry, and got together and actually did a whole set of work around these systems of engagement, these systems of record, and how do they relate to one another. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity for us as content management professionals, because a lot of what we found was, you know, the objective of a lot of these social systems is around creating value from content. It's around unstructured information. The opportunity for you all as people in this industry is to take advantage of that, right? To extend your reach in the organization into these new opportunities created with enterprise social and social software. And AIM is really driving at how do we help our organization and our members do that. So again, check out the white paper if you haven't already. I really think, like I said, it's a good starting point for the conversation, and AIM's already started in the next process to define this further. So I wanted to take a little bit of that info and put a spin around back to the video. How does this work that we did with Jeffrey around what he called systems of engagement and systems of record, which you saw in John's presentation, how does that relate to our business applications, our business challenges? So if we start off with what John had referred to as the systems of record, some of those earlier models he had around mainframe and desktop computing and things like that. If you look at the systems we put in place from a business standpoint, these were largely focused on data and process. If you think of your ERP applications, your CRM applications, your PLM applications, and you walk through and think about what these applications really do. They manage a large set of data. and they manage the business logic and process around how that information is gathered and collected and things like that. And this is a hard problem. It's an important problem to solve. I don't mean to downplay this part of the challenge. And as a content management industry, what we have largely attempted to do is to take things that did not fit this model, things that were unstructured, and fit them into this model. And in some cases, with a lot of sense behind it. So AP processing is a good example, right? An invoice comes in, it's in this unstructured format or semi-structured format, if you think about table layouts and things like that. And the objective from a content management standpoint was to say, how do we get that information out of the semi-structured format and into the structured format that runs our accounts payable system? Makes a lot of sense. However, if you move to the social systems that we're talking about, social business, in many cases, in most cases, the objective is not to create additional structure. It might be a nice side effect. I want to be clear about this. There may be a lot of value in putting a records policy around something that was created in a social software mechanism. But it's not the end objective. You're not out saying, everybody, we need to start blogging because we need to create more records, right? It's not the goal. So really, when you talk about content, whereas the language of the systems of record was data and process, when you talk about systems of engagement, content is the language of systems of engagement. And we have an opportunity as an industry to put our hands up and say, we understand how to talk about this. We understand how to generate value from content. And I think we sometimes fall into the trap as an industry about still always trying to pull everything back into that systems of record mentality. I was speaking with a customer who is, they run their ECM strategy at this organization, I think an extremely sharp person, and she made the comment to me, she said, what I'm finding is I used to go to a lot of these meetings about social software, and I would show up and I would say, we really need to get a taxonomy around this, and we need to have a records policy, and she says, and that's the last meeting I would be invited to, right? It was like, that was not the fun social stuff everybody wanted to hear about. And so, we had a long talk about this, and it really fit well with the timing of what we were doing with this Jeffrey Moore task force. And what we really realized was the opportunity was to go into that meeting and say, I know a lot about content. I know how to drive value from it. I know how to get more people connected to it. I know how to get it into the right systems. I know how to put context around it. Now, the background on how that's done, right, is sometimes applying things like metadata. One of the opportunities that will present itself might be to put a records policy behind it. But again, that's not the core objective. It's really about providing additional value around what social software creates. And to the point in the video, these aren't mutually exclusive opportunities. I like to have this mental picture of when we talk about CRM, there's this whole social CRM movement, and there's a certain subset of that movement that talks about, well, we're going to move entirely away from CRM and we're going to move to social. And I always say, well, what does that mean from a reality if you were to think about this a little bit in terms of what we're actually saying? So non-social CRM would mean I only care about the data. Right? We've always slightly done social CRM. We've always had the sales manager walk in the hallways talking to salespeople about what's going on. Right? You look at the forecast in your CRM system and there's a big deal. The first thing the sales manager does is call the guy who's running that deal to say, how's this looking? So you would never say, we don't want to do social at all around CRM. All I'm going to do is lock myself in my office, cut the phone cord, and watch the CRM data, and that's going to be my single source of knowledge. On the flip side, I don't think you would say, well, forget forecasting, forget having any concept of our numbers. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to walk around and talk to a subset of the salespeople and kind of see how we're doing, and that's how I'm going to run my business. Right? Neither of those are sensible ways to run your business. And to some extent, that's the debate I see happening when people talk about, like the video suggested, we're going to get rid of our systems of record and move to systems of engagement. Or we're only going to have systems of record and we don't believe in systems of engagement. The opportunity is actually to connect the two. The opportunity is to create systems where I have a system of record, I have critical business processes, critical business transactions, critical business data, and around those data and transactions, I'm driving additional value by being able to connect people, to get access to expertise, to really know what's going on behind. If in a CRM example, it could be a specific sales opportunity. In an ERP system, it could be any facet of your business. To be able to connect those dots and say, I see this opportunity, I know what's happening, and I have the context around it. So it is this relationship between the two that's what drives significant value.